Hi everyone, my name is Jean-Christophe. In this beginner Python tutorial, we will learn about Python functions. You will learn how built-in functions work, what is the difference between functions and method, and how to use those methods, how to create your own method, how to create, install, and use packages, which leads us to learn how to install pip. Python functions are by far my favorite topic. The reason for this is because they're so powerful. A function allows you to reuse code that others have written into your own without having to rewrite it yourself. There are multiple built-in functions in Python that you may already know at this point. Some of these are listed here, and you can have a full list of Python built-in functions on the website. Now let's look at an example of how to use a function. So let's say we have a list and we want to sum each of the elements, then all we have to do is use the sum function and put in the parameter inside, and then we can run it and it returns the sum. If you want to know what this actually does behind the scene, all you have to do is use the help function, and then you can put the sum function inside and run this. Then you have all the details of what the function does. You can also assign the result of a function by saying sum ls, just as what we did, but say the result is equal to sum ls, and then you can return the result, and you can see that this works as well. Now, earlier I mentioned how powerful functions are. So I was not just referring to functions, to be honest. I was referring to any piece of code that you can reuse. And another piece of code that you can reuse is a method. So a method is similar to a function, but it specifically belongs to a Python object. We've seen this in previous session, but everything in Python is an object. For example, strings, lists, dictionaries, they're all Python objects, and each of these objects has a specific data type. For example, str, list, dict. Each type of object has its own set of methods. String has the replace and capitalize method, list has the append and sort method, and dict has the get and update methods. If you want to use the string method, for example, you could say I have a hello. Here, if I want to use a method, it's not exactly the same way as what we do with a function. For example, with a function, I would just say type a, and I would call the method. But if I want to use, for example, another method such as title, and I try to do this, this wouldn't work. It would return the name error, it's not defined. In order to use a method, we need to call the object first, and then dot, and then use the method after. And then running this would work. So this is what I call a string method. If you want to use a list method, for example, it's similar. You just do ls append, and you want to append the number 5, and then you can return your ls here, and you'll see that your list was appended with the number 5. As I mentioned before, the methods are assigned to a specific data type. So for example, if I have a string hello, such as earlier, and I would like to use the append method and append the letter L, for example, this would return an error because the append method is a method that is assigned to the list data type. It is possible for some methods to be available for both data types. For example, the count method. So I have a string here. I could say print, and I could say s count, and I could say count the letter L in that number, in that string. And similarly, I could, instead of using the list, I could also use that method on the list object and say count the number 2 in that list. So we can see that there are 3 2's and there are 2 L's. So you can also create your own method. So this is where it gets powerful. In order to create your own method, you would use the def keyword. And then you would use the name of your method and use a parenthesis and column. And then you make sure that you have an indentation here. And then you could say something. So I don't know if you've watched that 70 shows much, but this is a function that says red foreman says dumbass. So this is how you create a simple method. And if you run this, nothing happens. That's not entirely true. This method was created. But in order to use the method, then you need to call it by saying red for men. And and now you can see that red foreman told you you were dumbass. You can also add arguments to your method, for example. So you could say def, and you put your function. And here you'll see that I always use the snake case when building method. This is one of the way that Python tells us that we should do it. So always using snake case with a method is a good practice. And you can put arguments inside your method. Again, column. And what this will do is that you can say print argument instead. So if we want to use that method, then we need to pass anything that we want in that. So I can say, okay, say something one, and it would have returned a one, or I could say something hello, and it would have returned hello. You can also have multiple arguments. So you can say def count this. So let's try to do something that will count numbers. So I have num1 and num2. And I will say, okay, print num1 plus num2. So that's your sum. And if I run count this, then I can add my arguments here and it will count properly what I wanted to count. What if, however, I come back to this method that I had and I forget to put the argument here? So if someone calls a method without any argument, what will happen is there will be a type error because it's missing one required positional argument. If as a programmer you want to put some fallbacks if the user don't put any arguments, that can be possible. You can also make sure to have a default argument. So for example, I could put arg equal, and then I can put my default argument here. So if in any case I just say something without an argument, it will say, hey man, you missed your shift at the photo op. That was Leo on That 70 Show. And then if, for example, the user ends up by adding its own string, it will override the default. So that's kind of the introduction on method. Now I want to introduce you to packages. To understand it visually, a package is kind of a directory of scripts. So if I look here, I've created an example package. So a package is a directory that has module inside, and each of these modules have its own methods or variables or whatever you want to add into your module. So this is what a package is. And if you would like, for example, to use that package, all you would have to do is you would say, okay, from my package name, I want you to import the module 1. So here I'm importing that module, and using that module, I could say just module 1 print hello, hello. And then running this, I would say that it printed my hello world method. So essentially, this is how packages work. And there are lots of Python packages available out there. So Python packages that we often hear about is Panda, NumPy, Seaborn, Matplotlib, and many, many more. And this is where it gets really interesting, is that we're not just importing a few methods, then we're importing an entire packages, and these packages are very, very powerful. In order to use a Python package, however, you need to install it. So it doesn't necessarily comes installed by default onto your computer. And in order to install a package, you need to install pip. So pip will just connect to the packages and install them on your computer. So it provides you with an easy interface to install packages. So if you are using Python, you need pip on your computer, or at least conda or whatever you want to use, but you need those packages installer installed on your computer. So the way that you install pip is you can go on your Bootstrap website here, bootstrap.py.io, get pip. You install the file that it's there, and where it's been installed, you will cd in the location of your installation, and in the terminal, you would write Python 3 get pip.py. So if I make an example here, I can open a new terminal, and let's say I would cd into where pip is installed. So that would be the location of the file. And from there, once I'm cding it, all I do is Python 3 get pip.py, and running this would install pip on my computer so I can start installing packages. If pip is installed already, all you have to do then is write pip3 install, and you install whatever packages that you want. You could install pandas, you could install NumPy, for example, or you could install multiple packages at once by just listing them this way. If you want to use that package, then it's super simple. All you have to do is import the package and say pandas. And running this, you would have imported the entire pandas package. And if you want to use whatever in that package, you can say, for example, I have that data set and I want to create a pandas data frame. So from there, all I would do is I would call my package pandas dot, and then I call whatever I want from this data frame, and then I put the arguments, and then I run this, and I would have created a pandas data frame using the pandas package. If instead you want to import only a portion of the package, then you could say from pandas import data frame. So then instead of having to use the name, I could just simply say data frame, and I could put data. So I don't have to put the pandas keyword anymore. However, this ends up with some losing context. So if you have a massive kind of code, it's easy to forget whether you've built that function manually or if you've imported it. But the reason why we are importing this way is because sometimes you just want one function, and other time it's just because it's simply too long to always write pandas.data frame. The standard in Python, however, is to use aliases. So instead of just using import pandas, we will say import pandas as PD. And then instead of using pandas.data frame, what we can do is we can say PD.data frame and put in our data here. And from there, if I run this, I have this data frame. So there are multiple standards. So for example, there is NumPy as NP, there is import Cborn as SNS, etc., etc. So this is it. That was the end of the tutorial on Python functions. I hope you enjoyed it, and stay tuned for my upcoming Python SEO course. I have a subscription in the description below until ready, and I will tell you when it's out. Otherwise, help me and subscribe to this YouTube channel and comment if you have any question. Thank you very much. See you in the next one.